What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind the Marsal podcast. This is episode number 143. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You could find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the X or Twitter machine, whatever you call it nowadays, at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind the Marsal. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, enjoying the episode, please make sure you follow, rate, like, review the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. Well, welcome back to the show. And as part of our continued division by division series, recapping the 2025 season and looking ahead at 2026, we're going to shift our eyes and our focus today on the AFC South. We're going to break down where each team stands right now. A ton of free agency stuff going on. Some of these teams have been impacted, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at some of the coaching changes across the divisions. And we're going to look at roster needs and priorities and all that good stuff for every team in the AFC South. With me to do it once again, as he's been doing each and every week, it is the man, Tyler Buecher. How's it going, brother?
Doing good over here, Armando. First day of NFL free agency occurred yesterday on Monday, so we've been trying to keep up with all the news. Been a lot of shakeups. I've had to rewrite our notes for this upcoming show today, as some of it being impacting this AFC South division. But yeah, it's been really fun just seeing how all of the change is going to impact this upcoming year. So I love this time of year. I think the NFL free agency period and the NFL draft are like Christmas for those of us that love to see all the changes in the OG Madden franchise mode guys.
Dude, I mean, look, we were talking a little bit about it before the show, and it was like crazy on Monday. We're recording Tuesday. You and I were actually going to record on Monday, but with all the free agency craziness, like I was not expecting the day to play out like it did. So many moving pieces, so many moving parts, a lot of notable names. We had trades as well. Like it was a very busy and active day. So we shifted gears and went into today. Today is Tuesday. We are recording here on March 10th. So anything that is you might be listening to this on Wednesday, it might change between now and then, given how crazy things have been here the last couple of, or now I want to say a couple of days, like the last 36 hours or so. It's just been a wild ride. I talked about it with Fensty earlier on today on his show there. So lots of notable. We'll talk about some of those free agency moves here today as well. We'll talk about obviously the AFC South. But let's talk about, let's jump right into the free agency, the crazy day it was on Monday. Um, Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs. I mean, you and I talked about this a couple shows ago, and we talked about the Chiefs obviously needing to reestablish that run game, figuring it out. Seeing what looking at the market, there was obviously some notable names, Kenneth Walker being one of them. I think this is a great fit. I think Walker in this Andy Reid system and this Andy Reid offense is going to do phenomenal. I think his fantasy stock is clearly on the rise. You look at this team, and no one attempted more than 9.6 rushing. No one averaged more than 9.6 rush attempts per game, like in this backfield. That's insane to me when I looked at that number. It's like, what the hell? How were they moving the ball on the ground? Like, no, they couldn't find a run game. Pacheco says the injury was not the same guy. Obviously, Kareem Hunt, towards the tail end of his career, no longer that, running back. He flashed early on in his career. What do you think about this? Like for both the Chiefs, for Kenneth Walker, and then dive into the fantasy outlook. Does he now become a top 10 running back on most people's boards?
Yeah, very exciting landing spot. I know many of us in the fantasy space were excited about Walker and the Clint Kubiak signing for last season. I think that Zach Charbonnet kind of derailed the excitement there with his 12 touchdowns, taking away a lot of the goal line work and opportunity. But now Walker should have that work unimpeded. You mentioned the low amount of rush volume for Kansas City. I don't think that's going to really change here, despite them adding a competent back like Walker. This is still a Mahomes-led offense that wants to be among the league leaders in pass rate over expectation, an Andy Reid staple. So we'll see Walker get more volume than what he saw in Seattle, but I'm not expecting a 25 carry kind of per game outlook for Walker. The receiving work should be on the spike, should be on the rise as well for Walker. We saw some good receiving work from him 2 years ago. What I really like about this, though, is the ability for him to rip off some explosives. The Kansas City offense just did not have that capability. They were bottom five in explosive run rate, bottom five in yards before contact per attempt, and in missed tackles forced per attempt. Their running backs last year were just corpses, just trudging along. So getting some excitement there, some dynamic and some dynamicism in terms of the ability to both run and pass makes Walker a very exciting prospect. Um, where do you think he's going to go right now? 2-3 turn, round two solidly. What are you thinking for Walker?
So Fetzi and I talked about this morning. He said, "Do you think he goes in the first round?" I'll be like, "Look, I'd be stunned, but I wouldn't like." Okay, no, let me rephrase that. I wouldn't be stunned to see someone take a shot on Walker in the first round. I don't think I'm comfortable doing so. Personally, I don't think I'm comfortable doing so. I do think 2-3 makes a lot of sense. And it's basically that's what I think when it comes to Walker this year is really how strongly you feel about him, right? Because I do think there's a path where he's averaging 16 to 17 opportunities, not rush attempts, but like, or 16 to 18 opportunities per game, which is more than he averaged last year. Last year, I think it was at 15 or 14 and change per game. But when you look at his numbers, when he had those high touches opportunities, he was, usually produced really good, right? It was just because he was you mentioned Charbonnet eating into his production, Charbonnet eating into his touchdown equity, given his role in the red zone. It was kind of evenly distributed there. That's not going to be an issue here. Mahomes doesn't run in the end zone. Kansas City is a team that frequently. So I think there's going to be, positive regression in the touchdown department. But I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that this means that he's going to get 25 rush attempts per game. I do think that this is a 17 to 18 opportunity per game and very involved in the passing game as well. I had said this morning. I think he does have great hands. That explosiveness that he has, that's something that this offense has been lacking in the backfield for several years now. So now you add this dynamic. So yeah, I do think that, when you look at it, top 10 running back, top 12 running back without question in my mind. I do think you can see upwards of 280 to 300 opportunities um, over the course of the season. And when you have a running back as talented as Walker, I definitely think you make a strong case for a second round pick. I'm not comfortable to take him in the first, though. I'll say that. Like today, March 10th, 2026, I don't think I'm drafting Kenneth Walker in round one. Would you?
No, but I know that entering the season, I'm much more open to the idea of leaning more towards into the running backs as early
Yes.
draft selections. We kind of talked about this on our very first division by division preview. Would you be comfortable with an RB start this year? Maybe that's a better way to phrase this question. With Walker
I,
as your second pick.
I would absolutely be comfortable. Having him as an RB2, like I'd be okay with taking him as my RB. Like let's say you take Jamar Chase in round one and you are able to get Kenneth Walker in round two. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm okay with him as my RB1. Having him as my RB2 and building that strong foundation with two really good running backs, I'm going to put him in that elite tier running back, given what I expect as far as opportunities are concerned this season. So, yeah, I would be very happy with him as my RB2. And I do like the idea of going RB, given the way, like you have to shift with the NFL, right? And we're kind of seeing now more running backs seeing more of those opportunities, both, between the not necessarily rushing 25 times per game, but between their role in the pass game, we're seeing more dynamic running backs with skill sets that both can catch and run in between the tackles. Like these kind of dynamic running backs are seeing those 16 to 18 opportunities, and that's what I'm chasing here. So to answer, that was a long-winded way of answering your question, but yes, I would be ecstatic with him as my RB2 and very comfortable with him as my RB1 as well.
Yeah, I agree with those both those sentiments. I do want to note that I kind of wish this was Travis Etienne that landed here, just because I think
Yes.
he's a more dynamic pass catcher, and I think we could see him benefit a bit more. Walker is still a competent pass catcher, but I don't think he's quite the same receiving threat in the mold of some of the previous Chiefs backs that we've seen under Andy Reid, even dating back to the Philadelphia days.
And there's not going to be any Pacheco anymore. Before we jumped on here, like he's signing with Detroit. That's the report there. So Pacheco out of the picture here. But I agree with you. Travis Etienne would have been a little bit more fun here. But we'll talk about Travis Etienne when we talk about the Jaguars. We don't have to talk about him, but yes, he is now with the Saints. Everyone, for those who do not know, he is with the Saints. We'll talk about that and that impact there for New Orleans as well as Jacksonville because it's obviously going to impact Jacksonville. Jacksonville has lost some key players in this free agency, man. I'm interested to break that team down. Other running backs here that some of these are going to be rapid fire, some of these are not. J.K. Dobbins, you and I talked about this when we talked about Denver. He re-signed with Denver. Don't think that that changes all that much. I think the team was very comfortable. He's a great compliment to Harvey. So long as he's healthy, I think he's going to be there, early down back with Harvey. The change of pace back, we could see a little bit more of a committee between the two in year two for Harvey. So this really doesn't change all that much. I don't think it does for you as well. Unless I'm wrong there, Tyler. But and then Rico Dowdle to me going to the Steelers. That's an interesting one. This is a guy that has bounced around now from Dallas to the Panthers and has had impactful, roles in both of these, teams. Obviously had a great year with Dallas. Did well when he was filling in last year for Hubbard, like really stood out. And now with the Steelers, a team that, Caleb Johnson just was not the answer. They got Warren there as well, but I think that was interesting. And then Tyler Algier to Arizona to me was another one that's a little bit interesting there. Kind of want to see how that plays out. But do any of these signings here, does anything have a huge significance or impact as far as fantasy relevance?
Yeah, I think the Dowdle one certainly does. I mean, we saw the Kenneth Gainwell, Jalen Warren duo perform really well. Both guys were top 20 in fantasy points per game. Warren RB19, Gainwell RB20. Um, I'm a little bummed because I liked what we saw from Warren last year. I thought Warren had the chance to potentially be like a top 12 asset. I think he's really got that ceiling in him. But perhaps this is just a move to keep some legs fresh for Warren. I think it also kind of is just another dark mark on the ledger of Caleb Johnson, the rookie that we didn't see play
Yes.
at all. Very just unfortunate round three pick from last offseason. But I mean, with Dowdle added, I just don't know what we're really looking at here. It just kind of seems like a bunch of guys thrown together. Where this makes a little bit more sense than last year when we were at this time looking at Warren and Gainwell, two guys that had comparable skill sets, comparable sizes. Dowdle, I think, is a little bit bigger there at 215 pounds. Um, Kind of offers more of the thunder element, despite what Jalen Warren was doing last year as the primary lead back and Gainwell is more of the pass catching back. I'm very curious to see if we see Warren flip back and see more of the receiving work with Gainwell now in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers, and this being a little bit of a different look in terms of the backfield. But yeah, I'd say that one's a bit more impactful than the Arizona one, which just looks murky.
Yeah, it just looks like it's going to be a committee, dude. Like I'm not liking this at all. I'm a big Benson guy, and this is not good. This is not good for the Benson shares in Dynasty. Yeah, man. Yeah, I did not like that at all. As far as quarterbacks, I think Malik Willis to Miami. We talked about that when we talked about Miami. Expected that. I expect them to be their day one starter there in Miami. I think there's going to be quote unquote competition between him and Ewers early on, but I think they're going to obviously shift gears there and go with Willis, see what he has there in Miami. Tua Tagovailoa obviously released there. We First of all, great call, right? Yeah, you said
Yeah.
it, Atlanta. So great call. I gave you a shout out today on the Fantasy Sports Daily Show. I did give you a shout out. I'm giving you another shout out here. We talked about that when we talked about the AFC East. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you're checking that out. That was episode number 140. Tyler Buecher and I broke down the AFC East, but I think him and Penix will be duking it out when they're both healthy, right? Like when they're both healthy, they're going to be battling it out there. Made sense, I think. Him landing there given their situation at the quarterback. But any big thoughts on Malik Willis, other than what we discussed? Like, do you feel like this is going to be, it for Miami? Do you think he's their guy right now?
No, I don't. I think this is I want to look at the details of the contract, pardon me. I know it was a 3 year, 67.5 million with 45 million guaranteed. That seemed pretty rich for a guy that really doesn't have a ton of traditional dropbacks. This was a dual threat rushing quarterback that I just feel like's been inaccurately priced ever since entering the league. I remember the night of round one of the NFL draft in his class, there was talk of him being a top five selection, and he never made it into round one. Um, Perhaps we see some kind of development. I mean, he looked pretty good in terms of a deep ball thrower. So like when you look at like advanced metrics, he looks fantastic in like EPA per play because he's either rushing for positive yardage or he's throwing deep bombs to like Christian Watson and that kind of company. Um, Now he's got Jalen Waddle to do that with, so that's kind of an uptick in in his ledger. Devon Achane, I think Willis is just really going to be a high floor fantasy player and not a player that's going to be a needle mover in terms of winning this team, getting wins for this team. I'm sorry, stumbling over my words here. Malik Willis to me is just a guy that you're not going to be able to win with. So I think in like a year or two from now, we could be looking at Miami drafting towards the top of the board. Which is again why I didn't get a chance to look at Willis's structured contract in terms of is it all front loaded or back loaded, but I just don't have a lot of faith here. I know he's going to look good on paper. He's going to be that typical like Justin Fields. Let's try to get the next rushing guy and hope he pans out. But I have a lot of pessimism. I'm going to be honest.
Basically, Jacoby Brissett with wheels. Basically, that's what we're talking
Mm,
about here. Jacoby Brissett with wheels. Now, look, I think he's going to win the starting job here. But I agree with you. I don't necessarily expect him to be the answer at quarterback long term for Miami. I think this is a team that right now they just needed someone that's, that the coaching staff is familiar with, the GM is familiar with, there with because of their time in Green Bay. Um, and they just need to obviously build and build a foundation. So I think this is right now a band-aid, not a permanent
Yeah.
solution here for Miami. Tom viewing it. Mike Evans in San Francisco, that was interesting to me. Pretty much I expect Jennings to go elsewhere now. If I think the writing is on the wall there. You and I really wanted Jennings to come back to San Fran, I think, but I don't think that's going to happen. There. Then Waldale Robinson to Tennessee. Not surprised there, given Dable is the OC there. We'll talk about that when we talk about the Tennessee Titans. We'll also talk about Alec Pierce, re-signing with the team in Indianapolis, and then Pittman being traded to the Steelers. We'll talk about all that stuff when we talk about the Colts. But any individual wide receiver signings this free agency outside of of the AFC South guys that you are looking at as interesting, intriguing, or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know why, but part of me really likes rooting for the 49ers and just cheering on Brock Purdy and this Kyle Shanahan system, where we've seen multiple players rotated throughout these past few years in terms of their offense, and we're seeing like another recalibration here with Evans coming in, Ricky Pearsall on the other side. Maybe they bring in a new guy in the draft. There are a lot of good slot options that are have some versatility and would be great Kyle Shanahan type receivers. Maybe they bring back Debo after last year's kind of 1 year failure. But I think the Evans sign was super notable, given that this team, in my eyes, is when healthy, has the ability to compete for a championship. Problem was their defense just had so many injuries across the board, where they just really never really had a chance despite making it into the postseason. So I like the signing with Evans. I mean, for years we've talked about the Kyle Shanahan and the X receiver. He finally gets like a legitimate, prototypical one here, and Mike Evans here, who, um, at age 33, I didn't see any type of drop off in terms of his separation rate, his production. There were some small dips in terms of like him sharing time and opportunity, but like on a per route basis, I still think Evans has some juice left. So maybe he can squeak out one more 1,000 yard campaign. Usually at age 33, these are the type of receivers I shy away from, but I will probably have some exposure to Evans in pretty much all formats.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's a great system he's joining, right? Like to me, that's another thing that stands out. The Kyle Shanahan system is a great one, like you mentioned. I think, and then there's a good supporting cast here, so it's not all on him. So I definitely think that this is a good move for both sides, really. And if he stays healthy and this offense stays healthy, this is a team like I couldn't agree more with you that could be competing here. I will say this: tight ends. Kelsey's back with the Chiefs. Kate Ine stays with the Bucks. Um, there's one that I thought of you, Charlie Kohler going to the Chargers. I thought of you, all right, because you have mentioned Kohler, not to forget about him. So I did think of you. Any thoughts on that? And then Isaiah Likely going to the Giants. I think that was very interesting. They lost Wan'Dale Robinson to the Tennessee Titans. They're kind of their security blanket. I think Likely becomes that security blanket. He's not holding SDR underneath because he does have that field stretching ability. Oh, he's capable of those big plays, but I do think he's going to work as a great underneath guy for Jackson Dart there. So, any thoughts on Kolar and Likely?
Yeah, to start off, Kolar, I like the play because it allows Gadsden to work as their primary receiving threat and let Kolar operate as the primary blocking guy. I mean, more and more offenses are shifting towards more 12 and 13 personnel where you want that inline tight end, and Kolar offers that. He's also a dynamic receiving threat too, just really hasn't had the opportunity. The Giants shakeup is really interesting because they brought what's his name? Daniel Bellinger and Wan'Dale Robinson, both Dable disciples from New York over to Tennessee. So now we've got Theo Johnson, who was basically a 50% slot receiver, rarely played in line, 30%. And then we've got Isaiah Likely, another player that kind of has some overlap there. So I'm curious to see how that one plays out. I'm not super convinced that Likely is going to make the fantasy leap that I think a lot of people want because I do think that there's going to be some hangups there. with Theo Johnson and with arguably them bringing in another wide receiver. Like you don't just go from Wandale. Like they've done this recycling thing with Wandale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, these small undersized guys. I'm just waiting for the next one. Like I feel like they're going to draft one here, and it's just going to throw a wrench in the upside of guys like Bellinger or Isaiah Likely specifically operating as that slot slash big slot, quote unquote. What are your thoughts on the Likely landing?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they're going to use these two tight ends because they're very similar. They complement each other. I think Theo Johnson, look, he dropped some passes and stuff. Like he had some struggles still, but I did think he showed some growth. I believe in the talent. I believe, that he is. I think he's a big playmaker. I like Theo Johnson. He was one of my favorite tight ends in his draft class.
Mhm.
I still think he has that ceiling and that potential that he had coming out of this draft, and I think he's taking small steps forward. So. Um, I do think likely he's going to carve out a role, though. I think that, okay, it depends on what they do. I think that's a great point that you brought up, right? Like, it depends on what they do from now until the start of the season. If they don't add much of a threat at the receiver position, I think there's a world where likely is that number two option. And you might even see Theo Johnson being that 3-4 option where he was averaging, I think Theo Johnson averaged close to 5 targets per game last year. You might see that 4 to 5 targets again this year, where likely, Neighbors obviously leading the way, and then likely right behind Neighbors. But it all depends on what happens between now and the start of the season, right? Because given what they have right now, there aren't many options here. So I am interested to see what happens. But do you think they play more 12 personnel sets like with Harbaugh there?
I mean, we've seen things like uh the Buffalo Bills where they've done like they call it 11, but their third receiver is their
Tight
second
end.
tight end. So, yeah, so I think we could see something similar to that. It's also like at least there's Harbaugh there, so we've got some familiarity with how to deploy him. I just am confused in terms of like the alignment stuff because we'll see Theo Johnson 50% slot rate, Isaiah Likely 73% slot rate last year. These guys don't play inline attached to the formation, so maybe one will make a position switch. Maybe we'll see more Chris Manhertz attached in line. I'm not sure. So I'm very interested to see that, and particularly if they don't add a slot receiver of note, because then I think they'll go with that big 11, quote unquote, that we've seen from Buffalo and other teams.
Yeah, I think that's really like the biggest takeaway, right? Like, see what they do from here on out. They don't find that slot receiver. I think this is where you're going to see a lot of these, both Theo Johnson and likely get a lot of opportunities. Like I do. You
Yeah.
mentioned their slot rates. Like they're both essentially slot receivers to a certain extent. And they have the skill set to do so, right? Like that's the thing. They might not add someone because now they have two very big and good pass catchers that can like line up on a slot and create a lot of mismatches. So I'm just interested to see what they do. But I do like this signing there quite a bit. All right, let's dive into the AFC South. And like we do, we're going to go in alphabetical order. Just for those of you who were not watching football last year, hopefully you were, right? The AFC South, though, it was a great division for the most part, right? We had Jacksonville Jaguars won the division at 13-4, Houston Texans second at 12-5. The Colts 8-9, but this was a team that was incredibly hot, incredibly, they were winning games until Daniel Jones suffered a season-ending injury there. And then the Tennessee Titans 3-14, last in the division, really started off poorly, started showing some signs of life towards the end of the season. We saw Ward playing a little bit better. We're going to talk about all of that here today. The first team here, Houston Texans, as far as coaching changes and whatnot, not many impactful, staff changes, personnel changes there in the coaching department. One note, they did trade for David Montgomery, so they do have now a bruiser at the running back position, but I still think they could continue to add pieces here at the backfield, but no longer a big need like it was earlier, just before that trade there. So overall thoughts on the Houston Texans. This is a team that look, they continue to get far, but it feels like they reach their ceiling every year to a certain point. Um, Stroud didn't really play his best football. The defense really took over here and really kept this team one of the best defenses in football. They kept its teams in games. It was always close battles, competitive games, for the most part. Uh, I want to see this offense take a big step forward, right? They have the personnel, they have the talent. I know the offensive line is an issue. They need to continue to build off of that. We'll talk about that as far as team needs are concerned. But for me, Tyler, I want to see CJ Stroud look more like what he looked at as a rookie, playing that with that comfort, not being indecisive at times, taking advantage of of the weapons he has at hand. And I think by establishing the run, I think they're going to be able to create that. I think they were trying that with Joe Mixon. It did not work out. I think that's why they traded for David Montgomery, someone that kind of fits that in between the tackle role, that bruiser, that guy that's going to do the dirty work, all that good stuff to establish a run game. So I think between the David Montgomery addition and just beefing up that O-line, I think they can make that happen. But what were your thoughts on them last season and kind of looking ahead into 2026? What are some changes you see needed here in Houston?
Yeah, I think this offense goes as far as CJ Stroud will take them. He had an up and down season in 2025. If we pull out his week 9 performance, where he played just 31% of the snaps, he had a 93.1 passer rating. That's quarterback 17, pretty average. Quarterback 17 in yards per attempt, 7.17. Quarterback 33 out of 36 qualifying and completion percentage over expectation. So that's the big drop off for me when I saw Stroud. He sacrificed the high sack rate, which was a big issue for him the first 2 years, into inaccuracy. He did a lot of throwaways and just kind of worm burners, basically, to get rid of the ball. He was quarterback 4 in highest off target throw rate, lumped in the mix with like JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Shador Sanders. And this was kind of by design in terms of when panicked, that's when he got rid of the ball. So we knew there were going to be offensive line concerns entering the season. And Stroud opted to post his lowest sack rate of his career, 5.2%, either and sacrificing that. Like when there's pressure, you've either got to throw it in harm's way. You've got to throw it away or take the sack. Like those are the three like triangle points you got to do. And each quarterback kind of like gravitates towards one point, sometimes in the middle between two. Um, for Stroud last year, it was throwing it away or force the inaccurate throws. Um, so like despite all of the success Houston had, it wasn't really because of the play of Stroud in my eyes. He cleared 20 plus fantasy points in just 3 of 14 games, offers very little in the rushing department. So in order for him to like take that and step forward, like you're talking about, he needs to go to like the Joe Burrow school and have like a really high passing touchdown rate to merit top 12 fantasy consideration. I just don't know if I see that with Stroud, where he still has that elite defense where he's not really put in position for volume, and volume drives everything in fantasy. So I think without the rushing, without the volume, we're really just kind of putting all of our eggs in the basket on our elite pass touchdown rate. And now they just added a great goal line back here in David Montgomery. I still think he remains in the quarterback 2 mix. That's kind of where I am with Stroud. I don't really see any kinds of needs to upgrade him. Um, yeah, and then we've got some guys that are likely to take a step forward here, and these young Iowa State wide receivers. So maybe we got maybe a year of growth, so to speak, with these guys taking a step forward, and there may be some lumps along the way.
Yeah, Stroud as a QB1, I don't envision it either. For me, I just want to see him take that leap forward, man. Like I just want him to look a little bit better on a week-to-week basis. Because I do think eventually they're going to have to rely on him, right? Like there's going to come a point
Mm.
in the season, and it might be in the AFC Championship game where they're going to have to rely on CJ Stroud. When they've needed to rely on him at times, I just don't feel like he's as confident as he was that rookie season. In that rookie season, he played with so much confidence. And I just don't see him playing with that same confidence that he did that season. I just want that back because I'm a huge CJ Stroud fan. Like I think he's an exceptional quarterback. I truly do. And like you mentioned, he doesn't have to do a lot because of the defense. And we've seen that before where there's other Brady went through the phase where he didn't have to do a lot because he had a phenomenal defense. We've all had that. Like, Peyton Manning, when he was playing in Denver, like he missed most of that season, and he came and played in the playoffs. Like there's a lot of these, situations, but I do want to see a little bit more from him. There. Where do you see Montgomery? Is he an RB2 in your eyes? Going into the season, like a top 24, or is he a little bit more on like the RB3 range for you?
Yeah, I consider him a back end RB2. I thought
Yeah.
this was a great move for Houston. I mean, we've got both Joe Mixon released, Nick Chubb released, so that kind of just creates the vacancy for like a between the tackles type of running back. And I think they found a kind of a decent like single slash double in terms of like a baseball analogy for Woody Marks. He's a good change of pace back, not a home run hitter. But he's good in the receiving work. And with Dario Ogunbowale, also a free agent, like so many backs here are slated for free agency. They just kind of needed to hit the reset button. So Monty, I view him as a back end RB2, should see good volume. But frankly, I don't have a ton of interest in Marks. I don't think he's a player that I'll want to put in start sit lineups. I feel like he's more of the roster clogger slash handcuff. And I we've seen Marks in that lead role, and I don't know if we've seen it to the point where he's an exciting handcuff. He's more just kind of a floor-based flex. where you're plugging him in due to injury. But yeah, that's kind of where I am. Montgomery, I like him as a back end RB2. Woody Marks is just kind of off my draft radar right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because even if Woody Marks starts out the year, right, as the featured back, the vulturing of touchdowns that David
Yeah.
Montgomery is going to take over and like the inside the 5 yard, I can already see this inside the 5 yard line, he's going to be their guy. Like he's been very successful in that role in previous teams. Like I don't see that changing. And maybe you don't want David Montgomery to be your featured back. Maybe you do want Woody Marks to be that featured back, and that's okay. But I think that I would say this Montgomery, but assuming both stay healthy at towards all season long, I would venture to say that Montgomery has more rushing touchdowns than Woody Marks, like at the end of the season, because I do think his presence in the red zone is going to be far superior than Marks' presence in the red zone, if that makes sense. As far as the receivers are concerned here, not any changes, anything you see, going into this upcoming year that you want to see different. But I don't see really many changes here in this receiving group.
We did kind of see a passing of the baton of sorts from Xavier Hutchinson over to Jaden Higgins as that wide receiver two opposite
Yes.
Nico. That kind of happened over the back half of the year. That said, Hutchinson saw 17 targets in that final postseason game. Stroud was just panicking. 4 interceptions. He was just throwing it up, trying to get rid of the ball quickly. That's where we need to see Stroud make his steps in terms of growing when throwing into pressure. Um, but yeah, I mean, we liked what we saw in Jaden Higgins. We liked what we saw in Jalen Noel as like young rookie guys out of Iowa State, round two, round three receivers, respectively. Higgins, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. Noel, I mean, he showed off his versatility. He was great as a special teams returner, made a lot of plays as a slot receiver also. Um, got a quote from Nick Casario where he said, I am sure we're going to see more of Jalen Noel next year, which makes me happy as a dynasty owner. And then Xavier Hutchinson. I mean, nobody wants to buy into this guy, but they routinely turned into Hutchinson, who's another Iowa State receiver, funny enough. Yeah, he was mainly perimeter guy out there, 79% rate, wasn't overly effective, 1.07 yards per out run. So he's just kind of absorbing the vacant snaps that kind of just take away the value of everybody else. So I would like to see them incorporate Higgins more, their round two pick. Like he was the number 34 overall draft pick just last year. I'd like to see him back. Christian Kirk is slated for free agency. I don't see him returning. What happens with Tank Dell? I think his career's over, but
Yeah.
there's quotes from the general manager that Dell will be ready for the start of the offseason program. So we'll have to see what kind of progress he's made after a full year off. But this wide receiver group, they look set, man. I don't think they really need to improve anything. Then they re-signed Dalton Schultz too on a 1 year deal. So pass catcher wise, Stroud's in a good position to produce. We just need to see him do it.
Correct. I couldn't agree more. We were big fans of Higgins coming out of college. I like him. I think he's a great, wide receiver too, alongside Nico Collins. Noel really taking on the Tank Dell role. Like that's what he's doing. He's taking on that Tank Dell role. I think Noel's going to continue to strive in that role. Uh, I don't see that changing, dude. Like, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? I don't really see it changing. Even if Dell returns, I agree with you. I don't want to say his career's over, but I don't think he's gonna have much of a role here in his return to Houston, man. I do wish, obviously, that he's able to get back on track because he was fun and exciting to watch at times as well. I think the big thing here is offensive line, right? Like, so when you look at what they've
Yeah.
done, they did bring back Ed Ingram. All right. So that obviously helps at the guard position, but this is still a team that I feel has been trying to really figure it out with the offensive line and just have not done so. They've also dealt with injuries at the position, but um, do you view that as one of their biggest needs at this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a need coming in last year. Then they traded away Titus Howard to Cleveland. Wasn't a big fan of that move. Howard, he's got like I don't think he was a great offensive tackle, but he also has added versatility. He had some good reps there at guard as well, so he may have been like a better like I don't know OL number six, kind of like a swing player. But yeah, letting go of him just kind of saps the depth. They also traded away Juice Scruggs. You know, Ed Ingram returned, but I think both left guard and center are replaceable. So I've got my top needs. First one's offensive tackle. Second one's interior offensive line. Back to back, I think this team needs to double down on some offensive linemen. Just really help this offense take a step forward. It really starts in the trenches.
Yeah, I have offensive line, like in general, like because this is for me, it's tackle and it's guard position. Like, no, it's true. Like it's the
Yeah.
tackle and guard position that this is a team that's what they need to focus on. My second one was running back, but with Dave Montgomery, that kind of solves that problem. The defensive attack, I think they could obviously add linebacker depth. I think they could use that. I don't think that's if I say that about any team, that's not a surprise, right? Like, but this is a team that's pretty set. So I don't, I think some linebacker depth would be good here. They did add when you're looking at they added Dominic Robinson, from the Bears, so they do get an edge. And then as far as key losses here, let me sort this out here. But key losses, they did lose Tim Settle. They lost Christian Harris to the Falcons there, and then that's it really what they lost. So linebacker, offensive line, that's where I'm at here with them. Anything else here on the Houston that we haven't, or the Texans we haven't discussed?
Yeah, I mean the offensive line, I can also say adversely the defensive line, like they can add just depth there. Like they're very
Yeah.
front heavy. Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, I mean those two are some of the best right now, but Daniil Hunter's 32. I think adding some depth there because they lost Danico Autry, Derek Barnett, and then a few other interior defenders as well. They brought back Sheldon Rankins, but I think just adding depth there overall, just to both sides of the trenches is how they should spend this entire draft class, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I agree with that because other than that, they're pretty set here.
Yeah.
Um, all right, we'll talk about the Indianapolis Colts here, and we have a lot to talk about. So they traded away Michael Pittman to Pittsburgh, and then they signed Alec Pierce. You and I were really bullish on Alec Pierce, and I thought it was going to be an aggressive market, but I'll be honest, $116 million seems a bit much. You're talking about top 10 as far as a wide receiver in the NFL right now as contract is concerned. I don't I don't know if I don't think he's a top 10 receiver. And that's my thing, right? But I understand the market value was going to be very high for Alec Pierce. But it's pretty clear their intention at this moment, right? They got rid of Pittman, who was their guy, and Pierce is going to be their guy now. Like this is who they're going to be, their wide receiver one. So let's talk about Alec Pierce, the signing. Obviously 4 years, $160 million there. And then the departure of Pittman, what that means for both the Colts and then how impactful that's going to be for the Steelers offense, not necessarily from a fantasy standpoint, I think, but I think it's impactful because you and I talked about what they needed, and Michael Pittman is kind of exactly what they needed. So I am excited for that, but his fantasy stock for me is absolutely dog shit at this point because of where he landed, to be honest with you. But let's talk about Pierce, the good stuff here.
Yeah, Pierce is a fun receiver. 6'3", 210, 4.41 speed, 93rd vertical. He was one of the most intriguing receivers in the open market this year. And yeah, he kicked off the legal tampering period with a bang. He was the first guy that we got the announcement, like 12:01 Eastern time. Um, Led the NFL in yards per reception, both 2024 and 2025. The 4 year, $116 million contract. It kind of seems what everybody was expecting. I saw a lot of reports gauging him from 27 to 30 million per year, and he hits that on the nose, 29 million per year. Um, I mean, I think he's a big get. He helps create splash plays. He's one of the better deep ball trackers. He's a plus size blocker. He opens room underneath for both the run game and for the receiving work for guys like Josh Downs, Tyler Warren. I think this was a huge get for this team, and it just kind of really tells us that this team is kind of done with Michael Pittman. They didn't want to pay him the $29 million cap hit. Um, that was the final year of Pittman's contract as well. So were they going to pay him $29 million for 1 year, or were they going to sign him to an extension? Pittsburgh opted to give him the extension, a 3 year, $59 million contract. I think Pittman's kind of trending down, one of those players that could see a sharp decrease in productivity real quickly. Um, Outside of touchdowns, wasn't a fantastic year for Michael Pittman when you look at some advanced stats. 8.4 yard ADOT, 1.46 yards per out run. Some of the lower marks that he's seen across his career. Really big drop in efficiency in contested catches. Not sure if that was more chicken or egg with Daniel Jones versus Michael Pittman, but I thought that was also notable. And then over in Pittsburgh, he's not going to go to a offense that uh, I'm not sure. I mean, we've got McCarthy there, so maybe we'll see at least an uptick from the boring stuff we were seeing from Arthur Smith, and at least one wide receiver, more than one wide receiver catching more than 15 passes, unlike the Steelers did last year. But it's just a move that I think you make for Pittsburgh if you're considering yourself all in for the championship, and uh, evidently they do. Evidently they do. I don't see it. I think they got lucky to get in the postseason last year, but. Um, yeah, it's kind of where I am. Happy for Pierce, pessimistic like you are on Pittman.
Yeah, man, I'm a Pittman fan, but dude, this is just like I look at this as like, all right, I'm out. Like I can't do it. Simply can't. I don't see Aaron Rodgers because that's just what we're expecting, right? Like, this is all like because they're Aaron Rodgers back, and I just don't see Aaron Rodgers it getting too high-end receiver production years from his guys. Like I just don't see it happening. Um, we talked about this Rico Dotto impacting the backfield here as well. The tight end position, we talked about this where they're in Pittsburgh, obviously they're going to be focusing. But when you look at the Colts now, let's shift gears to the Colts here. Daniel Jones, that's a big question. Like what are the Colts going to do early on in the season at quarterback? What do you envision here happening in Indianapolis? Because I think Anthony Richardson's out, without question.
I will say Daniel Jones was a bullseye by this front office last year.
Yes.
Prior to that, Week 14 torn Achilles, he was quarterback 9 in passer rating, quarterback 5 in passing yards per game, quarterback 5 in catchable throw rate, quarterback 7 in fantasy points per game. Um, Tearing the Achilles is a 6 to 8 month recovery, so that puts his Week 1 readiness in jeopardy. And you can say his initial effectiveness. I mean, if he's hobbled, not able to move around there. So the Colts are bringing him back. They use the transition tag on Jones. There's the possibility they extend him. I don't know if why they would. I would assume they would just wait. But like you noted, an early season starter would be a good pickup for them. I initially had Gardner Minshew penciled in here, but he signed with Arizona, unfortunately. Uh, Minshew had some ties with Shane Steichen back in their Philadelphia days. So I thought that would be an interesting move. I don't know now. Maybe my thoughts are they let Anthony Richardson rehab not only his eye, but also his image across the league, give him a few starts in Indy. I also wouldn't blame him for going elsewhere to try out something new, just a fresh setting. Yeah, I don't really have any strong takes there in terms of a possible replacement for Jones to begin the year in September. Not necessarily it's going to happen, but it seems the most likely outcome. What are your thoughts there on as a possible guy for a Jones replacement?
I was with you, man. I thought Gardner Minshew would be a good fit. I don't envision Daniel Jones being ready early season. I could see a mid-season return, right? And because you don't want to rush him back from that, number one. We saw what he was playing already hurt. So, like, that's the thing. He was playing hurt, and then he was dealing with a calf injury, if I'm not mistaken, or an ankle injury or calf injury before the Achilles tear. I remember that he was dealing with some sort of injury. Don't precisely know which one, but that led to the Achilles tear. So you don't want to rush him back, especially if you plan on because if Daniel Jones returns to form, which I hope he does, and I expect him to, right? Given today's medicine stuff like that, if he returns to form, you have yourself a franchise quarterback, one that was displaying and put on full display that he's capable of carrying this team, and you could win the division with Daniel Jones. I know the division is getting better here. With Houston continues to get better. Jacksonville, we'll talk about them soon. But they were winning the division with Daniel Jones at one point, right? Like they were the head of the division. So I was very excited for Daniel Jones. He needed a change of scenery. Shane Steichen, like credit to him, dude, for coaching Jones, for like believing in him and putting him in a position to succeed, right? We sometimes we forget about what the coaching impact is. We've seen it with O'Connell in Minnesota, like we saw with Steichen there last year in Indianapolis. So for me, I'm excited for Daniel Jones. I don't think he's going to be ready to start the season. Interested to see what they do here early on because when you look at free agency right now, there aren't that many great options out there available. That you feel comfortable with as your day one starter. So I'm very intrigued to see what they do here at the quarterback position. Um, but yeah, I think it could be a roller coaster of a ride early on in the season, right? Like especially for guys like Tyler Warren, Alec Pierce, even the run game, because if defenses are stacking eight in the box, it's going to be very difficult for Jonathan Taylor, despite the good offensive line here, for Jonathan Taylor to get much room. So I am intrigued what they do at the quarterback position. I'm eagerly waiting for Daniel Jones to return to the football field because it was fun watching this offense with Daniel Jones. Like he brought a dynamic that they hadn't really had in a while, which was a quarterback who can both run the football efficiently and throw the football efficiently, something he was doing at a very high level last year, right? I know that that's what they wanted from Anthony Richardson. They never got that. Interested
Hmm.
to see if they do keep him, but I do expect if they keep him around, it's going to be a high variance, week to week production for this offense there, Tyler. Um, Tyler Warren, I think great rookie campaign, elite tight end. I think he's going to be an elite tight end throughout his career. Do you think he's going to continue to take leaps forward here?
Yeah, I remember a lot of discussion of Warren versus Loveland, and I just remember shrugging my shoulders like that the one meme of the little girl and saying, "Why not both?" And that kind of was what happened. Both these guys home run plays in both respective eyes. When you look at like the splits of Tyler Warren with and without Daniel Jones, so from weeks 1 through 13 when Jones was healthy, uh, Tyler Warren was just fantastic. 13.1 fantasy points per game, tight end seven. He was tight end seven in yards per out run, tight end three in yak per reception, tight end four in first read rate among all tight ends. Like he was consistently involved in this offense in this passing attack. He was on pace for an 82 catch, 969 and six campaign. So I'm buying into this continued ascension of him. I think he's a fantastic click right now at ADP, 71.3. So that means like start of round seven, right? The end of round six, round
Yep.
seven. So you get 5 to 6 rounds to build your core and then tack on a tight end with top six upside. I think that's the perfect build. I'm super, super high on him. My only question is, what do they do around him at the tight end position? Because this was a team that had a dramatic spike in 13 personnel last year, a lot of multiple tight end looks. So, do they bring back Mo Alley Cox, Andrew Ogletree? Both these guys are free agents. Do they go tap into the old Philadelphia roots of Steichen? Do they get Dallas Goedert? Do they add Kylan Granson, a former Colt slash Eagle? Um, I'm interested to see what they do there. I would not be shocked if they hit free agency though, because like you said, this looks like a three-headed race in the AFC South. The Colts are not far away from making a legitimate run. They've retooled their defense.
Yes.
I think the Colts can make a true push here and challenge Jacksonville, challenge Houston. Um, we just need to see what they do at QB and then hopefully add some other depth throughout the rest of this free agency and NFL draft period. But I'm pretty bullish on Indy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I was bullish on them last year. I was very excited about the Daniel Jones signing. And once again, I'm bullish on them. I understand that there could be some struggles early on in the season, but I think this roster is good enough that if they get a competent quarterback under center, that they can win football games even without Daniel Jones. Are they going to, excel at a high level? Maybe not, but I definitely think they're positioned themselves to win football games here as long as they get someone that is competent under center here. They did lose pay the edge to the Raiders, but quickly added Arden Key, so they obviously
Mhm.
filled in that void right away, like you mentioned. So they retooled that defense. When you look at team needs here, Tyler, for this unit, I think linebacker, I think defense is their primary focus. I also think they could use another, maybe they could use another receiver here, like maybe one more guy that they could rely on. I don't think it's a need by any means, but I do think that they can add one more. I don't think it hurts here. But I think their focus should primarily be on defense. This is a good offensive line. Smith hasn't resigned, right? Um,
Braden Smith? No, not
no.
yet.
That's obviously something to watch here. But again, I think their primary focus should be on defense here, both in free agency and draft. Where are you at as far as team needs for the Colts, and then anything you think else we should talk about them?
I think the Braden Smith thing's actually a really big call out where
Yes.
I think if he doesn't return, offensive tackle should probably be their top pick, given how much this team wants to run the ball and the fact that they've got a hobbled quarterback under center and Daniel Jones protecting. I think that should be the number one priority. Beyond that, front seven. We could talk linebacker where Zaire Franklin was just traded. EJ Speed, they let go to Houston last offseason. So that's over the last two offseasons, they've let two of their star linebackers go. Lou Anarumo needs a guy there. I don't think they have the current starter for their inside linebacker position yet on this roster. I was kind of hoping Devin Lloyd might land here quietly,
Yeah.
but he signed with Carolina late last night. But I do think the starter there, the green dot, is currently not on this roster. They also need an in the box safety. Nick Cross led all safeties and tackles last year. He is slated for free agency right now, still unsigned. Maybe they bring him back. Edge, I mean, the Colts have pass rushers 2 through 4 in terms of their edge rushers and total pressures last year. All of those guys are free agents. All of them have expiring contracts, wiping out the depth substantially. And then I think running back, adding a competent guy behind Jonathan Taylor, keeping him fresh would be kind of wise. Maybe they go, it doesn't even have to be a flashy or splashy play. Go for like a Rashad White. Just get somebody there for depth that you don't need to lean on Jonathan Taylor 350 times in the regular season. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I agree. I think adding a little bit of a running, some help there for Jonathan Taylor makes sense. Maybe a someone who can catch passes in the backfield, like a pass
Mhm.
catching back, where they could just kind of change the pace a little bit there. But great call on the defense, right? You mentioned Cross. That's another guy that you have to look at the safety position there. So, um, outside of that, though, this is a team that I think is going to be competing this year. I think this is a very competitive division, man. Very, very competitive division. We've talked about two juggernauts here. We're going to talk about another team who had a lot of success last year, but they've lost already some key pieces in free agency. I'm interested to see what they do to plug in these holes here. The Jacksonville Jaguars, that is the next team on the list for us here. Travis Etienne and you mentioned Devin Lloyd, both gone now. Um, Overall thoughts on their 2025 season before we jump into the 2026 stuff. Overall thoughts on the 2025 season. I personally was excited to see Trevor Lawrence take that step forward. We talked about Liam Combs, like his impact at the quarterback position. He had a significant impact with Trevor Lawrence and this offense. I think Cohen, we talked about coaching with Steichen a minute ago, and we're talking about the same thing here, right? Like we look at Trevor Lawrence's career early on. And he dealt with a lot of coaching changes, some really bad coaching situations there in Jacksonville. Finally, we got to see what he's capable of, right? And we got to see him live up to that potential that we've kind of all been waiting for, showing both his ability to pass and run the football, that dynamic threat that he can be. So I was excited to see him and this offense take a leap forward. I think adding Myers really changed the dynamic of this offense. At the mid-season here, like that was a huge addition for them. I think they're very excited about moving forward with him. They've talked about trading away Brian Thomas, like so. I I was very excited what I saw with this team. They took a massive step forward. Obviously, losing Travis Etienne is a big, hit there because he was a big part of this offense. And then I think Lloyd, obviously losing him in the defensive side, that's you're losing a key piece of the defense. But I still think this is a team that's positioned, themselves they're in a good position to continue to compete in this division. And they're still one of the favorites here. So talk to me about this team, what you saw last year, and then looking ahead into 2026.
Great year for Jacksonville. I mean, 13-4. They won the AFC South. So I would say the first year of the Liam Cohen and James Gladstone experience was overall a success. Big step forward as the season progressed. I think that's super notable. The end of the regular season, winning 8 straight games. They went 5-1 in the division. No major coaching changes entering 2026. So we're kind of running the ball back. Um, but it wasn't all sunshine as we started the year. Like it was a rough start to the season for this offense. It looked like they were primed for self-implosion. Lawrence play very much a contributing factor for that. From weeks 1 through 10, he was quarterback 33 in the EPA and completion percentage over expectation composite. That's out of 35 qualifying. Weeks 11 to 18, he went from QB 33 all the way up to QB 5. Big spike in production, big spike in efficiency. His receivers weeks 1 through 10 led the league in drop rate collectively. Um, that number dropped from a 10.8% rate from weeks 1 through 10 down to 5.7, almost cutting it in half, basically. And I think a big reason for that was the arrival of Jacoby Myers. They kind of phased out Diami Brown as well throughout the year. Tim Patrick got to see some more snaps to close out the season. But really, it was a big step forward in the play of Trevor Lawrence. So I'm at the point where I'm viewing this year one experience under Liam Cohen almost like a mulligan, where like the first half of the year was just kind of rough. They got the lumps out early, but the infrastructure is there for Lawrence to have success. We just need to see a little bit more consistency. Super high fantasy production to close out the year. League high 27.3 fantasy points per game over the final 7 games. That's nuts. That's not something you see from quarterbacks that aren't mobile. Lawrence, I mean, huge amount of his fantasy production came from rushing touchdowns. We need to make sure that's very clear. And that's not something that I think we'll see from him consistently, but the fact that he's got it in his arsenal, that's good enough for me. Um, yeah, that's kind of where I am in terms of the pass game. We can break into the receivers individually, but yeah, there's just a lot to unpack with all these pass catchers.
There is a lot to unpack with all these pass catchers. Like you look at, so I think once they added Myers, it really changed the entire dynamic of this offense. I also think that with a new coaching staff, a new system, a new offense in place, it's going to take time for players to get accustomed and used to the new system and up to speed, really. Like, and I think we saw a lot of the growing pains early on in the season, which was the what you pointed out, right? Like the struggles offensively, the maybe the ball placement, maybe the drops, all of that stuff, the accuracy, the timing, all of that takes time to develop. And I think we saw that in game time happen, in front of our eyes. And as the season progressed, this offense just got better, started clicking, started clicking. I think it's going to pick up right where it left off last year, right? Like I feel like in 2026, we're going to see this offense pick up exactly where it left off. You look at Jacoby Byers. So in his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars, he carved out a 23% target share. All right. So he was their guy. He was their primary guy in the passing game. Um, what do you think? Okay, so Myers is going to be their wide receiver one in 2026. In my opinion, he's going to be their guy. He's going to be. There was a lot of chemistry between he and Trevor Lawrence. It was clearly there. He's going to be the security blanket. He's going to be the underneath guy when you need to move the chains. It's going to be Myers. I think he's an underrated receiver. Do I think he's an alpha? No, but I think he's an underrated receiver because he does a lot of the things that a lot of other receivers don't do in the NFL, right? So for me, Myers is very good. I think he's going to be a PPR, I mean, weekly floor play with pretty decent upside as well. But what to me is interesting, what's going to happen after Jacoby Myers? Like, what are we going to see here? Like, what's going to happen with Hunter? You have to figure that out. Is he going to play more on the defensive side or is he going to play more on the offensive side? I think it's pretty clear that in the NFL level, like, you can't be out there, 80% of the snaps for both defense and offense. I just don't think it's sustainable over the long period of time. But for me, it's what do you expect is going to happen here behind Myers? Because I don't know if you agree with me, but I think Myers is their number one receiver here entering 2026 without question.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic when you look at the receiver group in totality. So BTJ entering 2025, he was coming off a fantastic rookie season. The year prior to that, I think a lot of us, when we viewed BTJ as a prospect entering the league coming in from LSU, he was very raw in terms of being very toolsy and traitsy, but we just really didn't see a lot of experience. He really only had the one big year at LSU prior to him getting drafted in the first round, 23rd overall. And then we saw a big season where he put up arguably offensive rookie of the year caliber numbers in any given season. So it was really impressive, but he was still only 22 years old. So for him to enter the next season as the wide receiver one with Travis Hunter as the wide receiver two, these two young guys in a brand new offensive scheme, like you mentioned, Brenton Strange also a younger guy, ETN, Lawrence, like none of these guys are like 10-year vets. So to bring in a guy like Jacoby Myers, I think really was more of a culture change too, in terms of adding a guy that's been around the block, could play inside, outside, knows all the different roles, um, and can help like move the guys a little, maybe not down in the pecking order. Maybe we see something more Bills like, where it's kind of spread out with like low 20% target share for a couple guys, and then high teens for one or two others. Um, yeah, I think my thought is when we projections for the Jaguars, you've either got to be insanely bullish on BTJ and like project him to bounce back, or you've got to kind of just take what happened last year as uh, there's a good chance that his first year may be really tough for him to replicate. Like he may have been his best season to date, which is hard to say, but 87 catches, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, those are ridiculous numbers. They're not easy for many receivers to replicate. Maybe when we throw in the fact that this Jaguars team is also sporting a defense that's kind of turning things around, their pass rate could also take a little bit of a step backwards. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place with this because I think it's very unclear as we sit here in March how this passing attack will kind of go forward in 2026. Because I do think there's some more meat on the bone than what BTJ displayed. He was still top 20 in yards per route running against man coverage. He's an elite weapon out there. Like, I just think they need to maximize what they're able to get from him, clean up some of the drops, and with that, I think could see a natural shift away from Jacoby, unfortunately, and just kind of lead to, like I said, more of the flat target distribution. Travis Hunter to me just kind of jumps out as like the wide receiver four now. It seems like Parker Washington has 1 year left on his contract, but he really emerged as that slot receiver. And we've seen slot receivers do really well in this Cohen offense. Chris Godwin had a fantastic year just a few years back. Parker Washington, multiple 100-yard games. Travis Hunter had his best game prior to his season-ending injury. Now they want to move him back to defense with defense as the primary position and offense as a sparingly utilized role for him. So he's tough to click in any kind of redraft format. Dynasty owners with Travis Hunter are kind of stuck holding the bag. I don't think you sell because I think you're not going to get anything close to the return you spent on him last year, which was a round one draft pick. So that's kind of where I am. It's kind of all over the map, but I think all these guys are just kind of like going to be the rising tide that lifts Lawrence, where I think I'd honestly just rather invest in Lawrence as like a late quarterback selection if I don't go the early route.
So you don't think he gets traded?
BTJ?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you spend a round one pick on a guy like this to bail on him 2 years after, like I said, 87 catches, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. That's really tough for me to part ways with. I unless it's like a poor culture thing and he's just like ticked off that they brought in Jacoby. But I don't think you need to because I think his role as that downfield vertical weapon is isolated enough in terms of the other guys have got there. Like he can be their true split end and just be that X and let Jacoby operate as a flanker, let Parker Washington operate as the slot, Hunter as the a guy that rotates in, maybe got some goal line packages for him. I just don't see it happening because I think he's too talented to let go this early.
Yeah, man. I wish like so I wish he can we can go back to that rookie season. Like I don't know if it's there, like you said, like it might we might not see it here, but it was really it was a significant step backwards, man. Like it was a very surprising, and then just it just appeared that it was beyond the football field. Like that's what it and it was really not a ton of things that surfaced, but it appears that it was beyond the football field. Like it looked like there was some locker room things as well. um, I agree, man, because I thought he was very talented coming out of LSU. I thought he had a lot of the skill sets and the tools, and he put that on display as a rookie. Um, would be ideal to see at least somewhere between last year and his rookie campaign. That would be good. If he is traded, I agree with you. I think this guy is very talented. I think he has the skill sets to be a very good wide receiver in the NFL. It's just a matter of are you going to get the same opportunities? He had 133 targets or 134 targets as a rookie. Um, Last year, just not that kind of target share. So, yeah, man, I think it's going to be very messy here if he sticks around. I would be far more bullish on Myers if Thomas Jr. is out of the equation. But if he's still there, I do think it's going to be murky here. You mentioned Parker Washington, very involved as a slot receiver. I think Hunter is going to transition more on the defensive side of the football here as well. Anything else as far as the pass catchers are concerned? I think they're pretty set. I think Thomas Jr. I don't think this team needs to add anyone else to this receiving group. Do you?
No, I think they're pretty good here. I wish they kept Tim Patrick. We'll see if he returns. He's a free agent. But letting Diami Brown walk, that $10 million contract is just laughable when you look back on it now. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I look at the ADP of these wide receivers, let me rip it off real quick for you. BTJ, wide receiver 29, Parker Washington, wide receiver 37, Jacoby, wide receiver 41, and
See,
then
like
Travis Hunter, wide receiver 62.
I'm in on Myers at 41. Like to me, that's a
Yeah,
good buy.
same. And I would really only go after BTJ if I were planning on doing a Jaguar stack. So he would probably be my selective play, but I think Myers, no matter what, would kind of be an easy click too. Because what, wide receiver four? Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that.
He's your flex option on a weekly basis if you drafted there. Like he won't be my flex option because I'm far more bullish on receivers. Like most of my drafts, I'll probably take him as my five. Obviously depends on what I do this year, but uh, I'm good with him as my flex. Like I feel like he's a
Mhm.
floor play with upside. Like that's what I view him as. So I like that. Brenton Strange, there in Jacksonville. I'm okay with that at tight end. Where you at with him?
Yeah, I like him too. I thought he was going to be like a legitimate breakout candidate in 2025, and then he had a quad injury, really kind of put him on IR. And I mean, when you throw in the IR thing, like there's a reason why there's so many hurdles early in the year. They're still getting acclimated to the offense, injuries, players moving in and out, new scheme. Um, yeah, he was on pace for a top 12 fantasy season prior to injury. He was tight end 9 in yards per run, tight end 11 in yards per target. So like the efficiency marks are there, which are great. Uh, the only thing I would like to see more out of Strange are more designed looks, but that's just not really going to happen in a Liam Cohen offense. I mean, even with K Dot and 2 years back, it took every receiver ahead of him to get injured before we started seeing the 8, 9, 10 target games. Brenton Strange had a very low 5.1% design target rate where he was the equivalent, or I'm sorry, he was the number one read basically. That was the equivalent of Noah Fant, who was basically irrelevant. So At this time, I like Strange in any kind of best ball formats. He's going as like a top 15 play. I'm cool with that. He's kind of that guy that I wouldn't want to start every week in a start sit format. Like I'm not racing to get him in that format, but in best ball where I can just capitalize on the spike weeks, I'm very comfortable with him at tight end 14, 15.
I think you'll get a handful of top 10, top nine, top eight performances out of him throughout the season. They're just going to be very unpredictable. But like you
Yeah.
mentioned, I think it was pretty obvious. Like in Tampa Bay, when Kate Otten went off, it was every single receiver was out. And as soon as one receiver returned, like his role took a significant impact. Like it was significant. It wasn't even like a gradual. No, no. It was boom,
Yep.
cutthroat, done. Like that's it. So I agree with that. I do think it's going to take several injuries for there to be a clear cut, consistent week to week role for Strange. Is the talent there? Sure. Is the ability there? Sure. Are the opportunities going to be consistently there? I don't think so. And I think that's what's going to refrain from him to be a consistent producer for fantasy managers here. The elephant in the room, the backfield here. Travis Etienne, 312 opportunities last year for the Jaguars. He accounted for 30% of the team's opportunities. He accounted for 53% of the team's rush attempts, and his 52 targets were good for 10% target share there. A lot of usage up for grabs here in Jacksonville in 2026. Where do you see that going? And who are you investing in here?
Yeah, I mean, the natural answer for that's Bashal Tutin, the rookie speedster. Really kind of locked up in terms of availability, opportunity. I mean, despite the 4.32 speed, he had a 1.2% explosive run rate. That's RB 52 of 55 qualifying. So he may not have had the breakaway runs, but he was doing well in terms of rush success rate, 57.8%, top five. So I thought that was very notable. Um, like he just consistently made positive plays. We just didn't see the home run plays that we were really kind of hoping for him. So it'll be very interesting for me to see if we see him and the Quinn Allen, last year's other rookie running back, as the 1-2 punch. I'll note that Tootin was never a volume back, even dating back to his Virginia Tech days, failing to clear 200 attempts in any single year. And I really believe that this is going to be a committee situation where I know we want there to be a singular guy that's going to be the guy, but I think we're going to see a 1A, 1B situation with Tootin as the A right now. But this quote from their offensive coordinator, Udinsky, from last August is sticking with me here. And here's the quote. It's pretty rare to get through an entire year where one guy is a starter and he's carrying 80% of the carries every game for the entire season. It's great to have the depth at the position, to have the stable backs that can do it by committee, all have different strengths and weaknesses, and all can provide value. I think that the number two back on the squad may not be on Jacksonville right now, but I do think we'll see a 1A, 1B situation because that quote kind of just tells me they don't want to lean on one singular guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's someone that's not there right now that's going to help out this backfield. Who that is remains to be seen. But I definitely think that's a
Yeah.
need. Like we're going to talk about
Yep.
team needs right now, but I definitely think that's a team need for this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. I definitely think they need a running back, and then I think the primary shift after that is all defense. I think they could use secondary pieces there. The safety, cornerback position, I think is obviously where they could continue to build there. Defensive line could use some help. Linebackers, you've heard me say a lot of linebackers here. I think they can obviously they added Key, right? They lost Lloyd, but still they could add another linebacker here. But I think offensively they're set besides the running back position, and we always talk about adding depth to the trenches, right? So I'm not opposed to adding depth to the trenches here, but what are the major team needs here for this team going into 2026? Even yeah, they haven't really been too active. They've added they brief signed two guys and they haven't really signed anyone else in free agency. At least since we jumped on, I haven't seen anything between to that the time we signed on to now.
Yeah, they haven't been major players. I've noted that too. They've only got about $10 million in cap space right now, so that may be a big contributing factor. They did bring back cornerback Monteric Jackson on a 3-year, $33 million contract, but Greg Newsome, the guy they traded from the Browns with last offseason, he remains a free agent. I don't know if they'd need to bring him back. So like the Jaguars last year, they were giving up the number one most receptions and the sixth most receiving yards to outside wide receivers last year. So I'm kind of surprised they even gave Monteric Jackson such a big deal. But I think cornerback's a big need. You mentioned that. Safety, I think, is another big need. Andrew Wingard's a free agent. Eric Murray, they brought him in last year, but he's like a 32-year-old stopgap solution from Houston. I think they just need to add a legit playmaker there. The trenches, defensive line, the interior of the offensive line is also another spot of contention. And then running back, like I think the Tootin and Allen combo is pretty thin for a contender. So that's kind of what I've got.
Yeah,
Secondary, trenches, and running back.
same here. Same here, exactly that. Anything else about Jacksonville you want to talk about before we move on to the final team in this division?
Now we can move on.
Tennessee Titans, talk about being active in this free agency, dude. So this is the team with the one team in this division with a new head coach. So they got Robert Saleh there as a new head coach. They brought Brian Dable as their offensive coordinator. They brought Gus Bradley as their defense coordinator. So a lot of coaching changes here. Obviously, there's a young quarterback, Cam Ward, who look, he had a really rough start to the season. One of the worst quarterbacks in football to begin the year. They got things going, right? I'm not going to necessarily say that he emerged as a great quarterback, but he started showing signs of life. He started playing much better football than he did at the beginning of the year. Um, and this is a team that has been very, very active in free agency. So I'll run over a couple of guys that they've signed here. Mitchell Trubisky, they signed him. John Franklin Myers, the edge from Denver. They brought in cornerback Joshua Williams. They brought in uh, Austin Schlottman, Cordell Flott, Daniel Bellinger. You mentioned him. Wandale Robinson, another Alante Taylor. And then that's really the so they've added pieces to the secondary, they've added pieces to the offense here, they've added offensive line, they've pretty much added a lot of pieces here, both defensive and offensively. Um, Talk to me about this team, what you saw last season, then going into 2026, what your expectations are.
They also made one of the first trades of the offseason here where they traded for Jermaine Johnson, the edge guy from New York Jets, sending over Tavondre Sweat. So getting an edge help, sacrificing interior of the defensive line. We kind of talked about some of the fantasy free agents to begin the show, but quietly, my favorite signing in free agency was pairing John Franklin Myers with Jeffrey Simmons. Like that's chef's kiss, man. These guys are two elite run stuffers. They are elite pass rushers, and they are going to be franchise setting tone setters for Robert Saleh's defense. I love this duo. It's going to be, I think, something we talk about consistently when we get into fantasy matchups on a week in and week out basis. That it's tough to run up the middle against the Titans, and it's going to be because of the play of these two. These guys were just two of eight defensive tackles that had a pressure rate of at least 10% and a run stop rate of at least 5%. So I'm sticking with this. This is my favorite signing so far, free agency. That and the George Pickens retainment. I'll say those are my two favorite ones. Um, how do we look at this offense? I mean, dude, this is a 3-win team. They cleared house, bottom dwelling offense, bottom dwelling defense. I like the coaching staff. It's kind of fun. I didn't think Salah was merited a run again at head coach. Pardon me. The Jets seemed like not every coordinator is positioned to be a head coach, and I think Salah is kind of one of those guys. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just got dealt a poor hand trying to do it with the Jets. He's now got a chance to do it with the Titans. Uh, I don't know if it'll turn around, but I like the coordinators he brought in, and Dable and Gus Bradley. Um, where are we? The free agents you mentioned, a good number of those guys have either ties to the Jets or Giants from Salah or from Dable. So I think it's very interesting that we see some familiarity coming over, um, which isn't a bad thing for an offense or for a team that went three wins last year. Adding some guys, just some new blood, not the worst idea. Starting with Cam Ward, rough year, like you mentioned, really, really tough season. Finished as the fantasy quarterback 34, 11.4 fantasy points per game. He didn't clear 15 points in a single game until week 12. Uh, Terrible across the board in EPA per play, success rate, yards per attempt, completion percentage. No matter how you look at it, it's rough. And then to throw salt on the wound, week 18, he gets a right shoulder AC joint sprain. So he's tracking well, quote unquote, with his rehab. So we'll see what that means in terms of joining the upcoming offseason program. But just to end the season on a sour note of your star quarterback getting injured, just again, throw salt in the wound for better or worse. I don't know. Where do we go from here, man?
I'm out on Cam Ward in 2026. I was out on him last year. I agree with it. Like he showed signs of life, but I don't think it was enough for me to say, all right, there's something here. Um, I still don't know if he's the answer here in Tennessee. I don't know if he's the long-term solution
Yeah.
either. But I do think they've done a good job to like restart the rebuild, right? Like because this is a team that was missing a lot of pieces both on offense and defense. I mean, yeah, Alec Ayomaner as your primary guy last year. Not to take anything away from him, I actually like him. But again, Calvin really obviously was not that guy for them. It just really bad there offensively. As far as Cam Ward's concerned, they're bringing in pieces to help him. I do want to see what happens here. Obviously, Brian Dable, I think he's a good coordinator, so I agree with you. I think that this was a good addition. I think this is the kind of coach you want with a young quarterback, helping out the young quarterback. So, and to see what his impact on Ward is here. Um, but again, I'm not all that optimistic about Ward going to 2026. Like I don't see a significant, leap forward or even a leap forward period. Um, you know, so it's a wait and see approach. I'm not bullish at all in the Tennessee offense. I don't so we'll go to the wide receivers, right? Let's jump into the wide receivers here. And you look at Ayo Maynor, he led the team with 89 targets. Like that was his 89 targets. He had an 18% target share. Okonkwo was number two there with 79. And then you look at, Shamir Dike, 74. Like it was, I mean, look at this receiving group. So I definitely think Wandale Robinson is going to bring help here. But I think he takes a step back from his time in New York, right? Like, I don't know if he's going to be as productive as he was in New York. So for me, it's a good signing for Tennessee to bring in someone like Wanda Robinson. I still think it's a position of need. I still think they could use another wide receiver here without question. Um, but when it comes to Robinson and his fantasy stock, I'm very, very pessimistic going into 2026. Someone who I've always kind of gravitated towards as a floor play. I don't even know if we're going to have a floor here for Wanda Robinson. What are your thoughts on him? The addition and then the rest of this receiving group, like Ayo Maynard. Do you see a step forward in 2026 for him, this young receiver, or what do you see this group shaping out like?
Rough, man. The outlook is not great. If we had a magic eight ball, outlook not so good would be our response we'd get. AO Manor, you mentioned the 89 targets, 41 catches on 89 targets. The only receiver with a lower catchable target share than AO Manor, who had a 62.8% catchable targets. That means 6 of every 10 was catchable, was Jahan Dotson, 54%. He had the third lowest catch rate ahead of just Darnell Mooney and Isaiah Bond. So I think it was a chicken versus egg thing. Ward didn't put AO Manor in a position to succeed, and AO Manor rarely capitalized when given opportunities. I really liked AO Manor as a prospect. I thought his film was fantastic coming out of Stanford. Just didn't really see it translate here. So I'm kind of wanting to just see it again here. I mean, it can't get much worse.
Hmm.
uh, I guess what could get worse is not this number of opportunities. Um, Calvin Ridley broke his right fibula returning for his age 32 season, career low receptions per game, yards per game. The Titans need a wide receiver one. I don't think it's Wandale Robinson. A big reason that I'm not super interested in this is it's kind of waving the white flag on Shamir DK. Um, Out of 68 wide receivers that ran 300 routes last year, DK was wide receiver 65 in separation win rate, 57 in yards per route run, 63 in ADOT. Like you can be a shallow A dot receiver in this league. Wan'Dale Robinson's great proof of it, but we never really saw any spark from DK in terms of like yak per reception or missed tackles forced. It just wasn't really there. All of his like allure came on special teams. So maybe that does translate to on the field on offensive snaps later down the road. I don't know. We just didn't really see it in year one. Then you throw in a roadblock named Wandale Robinson to prevent any kind of breakout from DK. And it just kind of seems like you're just kind of nixing the opportunity for him to take a step forward. I would have much rather seen them go after an outside wide receiver and replace the injured Calvin Ridley rather than do this Wandale Robinson move. But we've got the Brian Dable thing. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of this pairing, to be honest. I do think it really just kind of raises the floor for Ward, which maybe is what we're really after here in 2026. Just a rehab year in terms of image and production, but I don't see that as a ceiling mover in terms of like getting this offense to take a step forward. Um, Very bearish on the whole unit. I'll just say that.
Same here, man. Same here. And Daniel Bellinger added here. I just think you're bringing in people who are familiar with this offense to help this young quarterback. That's what this seems like. I don't think neither of these are the answers. Bellinger, do you have any interest in him? That addition here.
Not him, but so they got Chico Okonkwo as a free agent. I really liked last year's rookie Gunnar Helm. Comes from
Yes.
Texas. Anyone that was playing any DFS, he was that constant 2,500 free square on DraftKings that you were just kind of paying down to play and just hoping he got a touchdown. And he did really well. He was tight end 16 in yards per route run, tight end 7 in catch rate among all tight ends with 50 plus targets. He really shined in the preseason, and for that reason, like he's a guy that I was kind of gravitating toward week in and week out. This is also another team that did a lot of two tight end sets with Okonkwo and Helm both on the field. Not overly athletic, but did have a knack for making big plays. I'm viewing Bellinger as more of that inline guy for the Titans here, as the blocking typical Y with Gunnar Helm being more of the number one receiving threat at tight end. I actually like buying Gunnar Helm right now in for cheap in Dynasty. I think he's a sneaky guy you can buy while people are looking at this Bellinger contract.
Yeah, I agree with that. I neither of them stand out to me in redraft as guys I'm overly interested in, but I agree. I think Hellman Dynasty makes sense that he's still going to be that guy for us that we in DFS every now and then, we decide to punt the position. Why not Gunnar Helm? I mean, with a name like that, I'm going to punt that position. All right. So from what I'm taking, you and me are pretty much lockstep here. We're not overly optimistic about this offense. It doesn't look like we're going to be all that invested in this offense this season in fantasy, not even in best ball for me, right? Like I just don't see enough. A.O. Maynard would be that guy, and I don't think his stock is going to be where I might have some random, just one-off shares off him because I do agree with you. He was someone that I liked going into last year's draft class, right? Like and I think you did his rookie profile if I'm not mistaken, and you pointed out a lot of the good stuff that he brought to the table. And I don't want to necessarily say it was all him last year, right? Because it's the offense in general was just garbage. Like it was just
Yeah.
bad. And I think it was we could write it off as it was just one of those seasons for this Tennessee Titans. It was not a good year. Um Tony Pollard, we'll shift gears to the backfield now. Tony Pollard, like started off the year really bad. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. In week 14, he decided that he wanted to start running the football. All right. With three back-to-back 100 plus yard games, he finished RB2, RB11, and RB29. Then he went off and followed that off with RB18 performance at RB24. So he closed out the season as a top 24 back in 4 out of the 5 games last year. Um, what are you doing with this backfield? Like what the hell are we doing here, Tyler? Like, what is this? What happened there with Tony Pollard down the stretch?
A fourth straight 1,000 yard season for Tony Pollard. Man, this guy's just continuing to produce. It's just not really translating into fantasy goodness. And a lot of that is because of the lack of touchdowns. The Titans offense, 30th in points per game. Tony Pollard finished RB 30, coincidentally, 10.9 fantasy points per game. Not great in terms of the advanced metrics, like bottom dwelling and explosive run rate, success rate, missed tackles forced. You know, I want to invest in something here, but I got nothing. This offense finished 28th in EPA per rush. They were middle of the pack in yards before contact per attempt in terms of blocking. That's decent, 14th. But they're also getting rid of some of their guys along the front. Kevin Zeitler, Lloyd Cushenberry. So that's even like a shaky stat to lean on. I just know I'm all the way out on Tyjae Spears. This guy just has no cartilage in his knees. He's continued to operate as the pass catching back in this offense. He's missed 9 games over the last few seasons due to hamstring, concussion, ankle, and like I said, he's got no knees. So I'm just all the way out on Tyjae Spears. But Tony Pollard right now is ADP is RB 32. Like I said, he finished RB 30 last year, so that kind of feels appropriate. Like we're not really kind of overly pricing him. Maybe there are some rookie backs that have a little bit more excitement, but I think Pollard could still have another path to 1,000 yards rushing as they just try to get through games and lean on this running attack. I don't have much to say. Like, sorry, Tennessee Titans fans. Hopefully they can hit the fast forward button and get you to 2027 quickly.
Yeah, man. I'll be honest. I was on Pollard last year. He didn't pan out like I hoped it did. Like I know over the course of the season, the numbers were okay given his ADP, but it was not a fun season. Like if you had him on your roster, if you drafted him, it was
No.
far from a great season. Like a lot of that came when you were probably benching him anyways, right? Like you were done with him. You cut
Yeah.
him. You were bored of it. Like you said, fuck this, I'm done. And then guess what? That's when he started producing. I agree with you. Like he's that one player that maybe in my drafts, like I'm looking around, like why not? It's just 1 or 2 shares of Pollard. But again, the numbers were not great there. The offensive line is an issue here. Um, let's talk team needs here. I think this is a team like I know they've done a lot, they've been very active, but I still think there's so many holes to plug here. We talked about receivers still being a position of need for this team. I think it is a position of need. I think they need to continue to build this offensive line. I'm not sold that Cam Ward is the answer. I know they're not going to be addressing that right now, but I'm not sold that Cam Ward is the answer. And I think they have to continue to beef up the defense here as well. I know they've done a good job, but doing so, but I still think that they could definitely use some players on the defensive side of the ball. The cornerback position is one. I know they've addressed that, but I still think they could add depth there. Where are you at as far as team needs here when it comes to the Titans?
I agree with everything you just said. We're kind of in lockstep there. Receiver for me is the number one need. I don't think Calvin Ridley is ever going to return to the same player.
Mm-mm.
Like age 32 coming off a broken fibula, you just don't really see it. And then we didn't see it from A.O. Manor, DK, Wandale Robinson, maybe, maybe. I don't know. Uh, I don't see excitement there. Interior of the offensive line, like I said, Zeitler and Cushenberry both slated for free agency. It's time to add some youth there. I would like to see them go the veteran center and rookie right guard route, and that's kind of what they did. They brought in Schlattman from the Giants as a veteran center just to add some depth there. Edge, also super important. They traded for Jermaine Johnson, but this was a team that also let go of Harold Landry and Arden Key over the last 2 years. So they're just kind of letting their premier edge pieces just walk. So getting someone there would be wise. The interior of the defensive line, like I love the Franklin Myers and Simmons, but let's add another guy there, keep the rotation going because they let go of both Devondre Sweat via that trade, and then Sebastian Joseph Day, another under the radar defensive lineman that I like. And then the cornerback position, they just threw shit at the wall. They're hoping
Yeah.
one of Alontae Taylor, one of Cordell Flott, one of Joshua Williams. They're hoping one of them sticks and does well. L'Jarius Sneed, swing and miss signing by this team. Um, like they signed a boatload of free agents, but will any of them pan out? That's a big question mark entering the offseason.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think this is a team that still has a lot of holes to fill, um, far away from being competitive. But I do think they've made some good steps so far, right? Like I think I think more so the coordinators. I agree with you with Robert Saleh. Like I don't know if he's a head coach, or if he's that guy for them. But I do think Dable's a really good offensive coordinator. I think Bradley's fine, the defense coordinator. So I think they've hit on the coordinators, I think. Remains to be seen with the head coaching position. And then, of course, I think there's just a ton of voids to fill here, unfortunately, on this roster. So, and in a division like this one, it's very hard to see them making a strong, leap forward in 2026. Like you mentioned, I think if you're a Titans fan, looking ahead at 2027 and just hope that they, are building the foundation the right way here this 2026 season. So, lots of holes here though, without question, Tyler. Anything else before we jump off here on the Titans that you want to talk about?
I'll just know they still have nearly $50 million in cap space. It's the fifth most right now. So they can still be some players and add some more notable notable game changers in terms of either the offense or the defense. So I'm very eager to see what they continue to do or if they try to roll over some of that money. They just brought in a new general manager last year, Borgonzi, and his quotes from last year, OL and DL, they're going to be big priorities for us. So we saw him do that last year, bringing in Zeitler on the 1 year deal. This offseason, that we did the Jonathan Franklin Myers route. Maybe they go with another big purchase there at OL or DL. They've got the number 4 draft pick. Very eager to see what they do with that as well.
Yeah, same here. And maybe you see them making bigger splashes on the defensive side of the football, given the coaches that they have here. Like Salah's, we know that he's a defensive minded coach. Like interesting to see what they do here. But yeah, I agree with you. They have plenty of money. They need to make more splashes. And adding a key piece here would be great. Just especially a young key piece.
I could see an older guy too just selling for the bag, like Trey
Ah,
Hendrickson, just give him a boatload of money. I think he'd be fun to add to this front four, and this would be a fun front four then. Um, maybe that's what they'd go. Maybe they drop the money on a big defensive end.
they could. They definitely could. I mean, look, this team could do anything right now because
True.
it's like when you look at the roster, there's no wrong moves. Like there's zero wrong moves here, I think, with the Tennessee Titans. Well, we had a lot to unpack today, Tyler. We talked
Yeah.
about obviously with free agency kicking off. We're normally just recapping these divisions and looking ahead. But there was a lot of moving parts in free agency, some that impacted the divisions, others that did not. But we definitely needed to talk about some of that here. And I'm pretty sure later in the week when we talk again, yeah, we're gonna have some more free agency stuff to talk about. But so bear with us here. These are going to be a little bit longer with this free agency news, Tyler. What do you got going on over there? Where can everyone follow you? All that good stuff that we always do at the end of the show, man.
Yeah, we are recapping all these free agents. You and I are updating our free agency tracker with
Yes.
every upcoming signing that we get here. We're also rolling out our rookie profiles. Started a few of those earlier this week, so check those out over at Fantasy Guru. And you can catch all of my work over at Fantasy Guru and on the Twitter at Tyler Buecher, Buecher.
Yeah, make sure you're checking out his work, his rookie profiles. He's helping me with the free agent tracker each and every day. I greatly appreciate you for that, Tyler. Make sure you're checking that out. Make sure you're checking out the rookie profiles. Like Tyler mentioned, our franchise mode has officially launched. So make sure if you haven't already checked that out, that's a great package to have there. That includes the free agency tracker, that includes all of our rookie profiles. There's one posted daily there at fantasyguru.com that's going to include the UFL content as well, which is set to kick off what I think it's next week, if I'm not mistaken. We're
Very
getting
soon.
that. So it's right around the corner. Lots of content on the site. We got the obviously the NFL draft not so far ahead either. Where we're going to be starting some of our NFL draft content there as well. So lots of moving parts at fantasyguru.com as well, with lots of content, lots of behind the scenes stuff as well of things that are going to be set to come out in the future weeks. So make sure you're checking all of that stuff out there at fantasyguru.com. Remember, take advantage of our franchise mode package that's going on there right now. You can find all of my work at fantasyguru.com. You could obviously catch me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram threads and TikTok at Armando Marsal. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast and the show, please make sure you follow, rate, review, like the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. Once again, we recap the AFC South 2025 season. We looked ahead at the 2026 season. We also talked some big splashes in NFL free agency, which has been a wild ride so far. Tyler, I always appreciate your time. Always appreciate you joining me, talking football with me, man. Always a blast. For the great Tyler Buecher, I am Armando Marsal. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.